A man in his 70s sat in her office. His hands, steady from a lifetime of work, shook for a very different reason. It wasn't illness, it was the weight of a secret millions of men carry in silence. He looked her in the eye and said, "I didn't know. I was hurting myself." For years, in the privacy of his home, he had done what many men his age do, without realizing the quiet harm it could cause. And he's not alone. People are told that self-exploration is natural, harmless, even healthy. But what if the way it's done matters more than most realize? In this video, she shares 7 crucial truths about masturbation that older men wish they'd known sooner. Truths that can preserve circulation, protect the prostate, and even restore confidence. She asks viewers to stay to the end because the last 2 secrets may change how they age, connect, and live in the years ahead. The conversation is overdue, but not too late. Before she begins, if someone hasn't subscribed yet, she encourages them to hit the button and turn on the bell so they never miss age-specific, honest men's health guidance. If the topic resonates, she invites them to type 1 in the comments to let her know they're here. If not, type 0. That feedback helps her serve viewers better. Now to the first truth, a secret that has quietly reshaped the lives of many older men once they finally understood it. Secret 1. An erection is no longer the whole story. And that's okay. She recalls a 68-year-old gentleman looking at her with a mix of frustration and shame. "Doctor, I can't do what I used to. Does that mean I'm not a man anymore?" The question broke her heart because she hears it so often. Men arriving in quiet panic over a change they were never prepared for. Things aren't as firm, as quick, or as reliable as they once were, and many assume that means the end of their sexuality altogether. Here's the truth she wishes every man over 60 had learned earlier. An erection is no longer the whole story. That's not failure, it's evolution. As people age, bodies change naturally. Blood flow slows, hormones fluctuate, nerves take their time. What once felt automatic now asks for patience and intention. But that does not mean sexuality is broken. In fact, it can become more meaningful than ever. Once a man stops measuring intimacy only by firmness. The world he grew up in praised performance, equated masculinity with stamina, and rarely left room for vulnerability. No one pulled him aside to say, "Hey, pleasure still matters, connection still matters, and you don't need a perfect erection to have either." She has treated men who spent years believing they were somehow defective, when what they needed was a new understanding of how their bodies were evolving. Many never realized that orgasm and erection are not the same thing. A man can still experience deep release, emotional intimacy, and physical satisfaction without the complete response. He had at 20 because no one taught this. Many men suffer in silence. Believing they've lost something that never left, it simply changed. What matters now isn't performance, it's presence. Not pressure, but permission. When a man stops chasing what was and starts exploring what is, he opens the door to a new kind of intimacy, rooted in patience, curiosity, and self-respect. That's why this first secret is so crucial. She has watched lives change when men finally understand they are still whole, still worthy, and still capable of pleasure, even if the path looks different than it used to. And speaking of what most men never knew, she shares the second secret, one that goes even deeper. Because what if masturbation isn't just about sex at all, but about emotion, memory, and the quiet way a man stays connected to himself? What comes next may change how he sees the act entirely. If this resonates, she invites viewers to type the number 1 in the comments so she knows they're still here and following along. Now to the next secret, one that can change how a man sees himself and his body in a completely new light. Secret 2. Masturbation isn't only sexual, it's emotional and neurological. Not long ago, she sat with a retired veteran in his 70s. He wasn't there for an emergency. In his words, "I just don't feel anything anymore." Not only sexually, overall. At first, he thought his problems were physical, but the longer they talked, the clearer it became. His habits weren't about desire, they were about something deeper, quieter, and more emotional. He had been masturbating most nights, not out of lust, but as a way to cope. He hadn't realized it had become his method for managing sadness, sleep problems, and even loneliness. That moment changed how she saw him, and how he saw himself. Here's a truth she wishes more older men knew. After 60, masturbation isn't only physical release, it's tied to the brain, emotions, and the nervous system. After orgasm, the body releases dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, chemicals that regulate sleep, lower anxiety, and lift mood. For many men, especially those living alone, this simple act becomes a way to reclaim calm, connection, and even a sense of control. But done without awareness, it can slowly turn hollow. That's what happened to her patient. The ritual remained while the meaning slipped away. Many were raised to be strong, to bury feelings, to believe that feeling deeply made them weak. So when the only time a man truly lets go is in private during a moment of self-touch, that act becomes more than physical. It becomes survival. Most men never see it that way. They think they're clinging to a youthful habit, not realizing their bodies are still seeking peace, not just pleasure. The risk isn't in the act itself, it's in doing it mindlessly. If a man turns to masturbation only to pass time or to escape feelings he hasn't named, he can slowly lose his ability to connect with himself at a deeper level. Approached with intention and presence, it becomes restorative, an act of emotional clarity and neurological health. And yes, at his age, that still matters more than ever. If that secret was surprising, the next may feel even more urgent. Why? Because not touching himself at all, letting that part of him go quiet, may be doing more harm than good. What comes next may explain changes in his body no one warned him about. Secret 3. Use it or lose it is real, just often misunderstood. She remembers the patient clearly. He was in his 70s, a widower who had just started dating again after more than a decade alone. When he came in, he wasn't excited, he was embarrassed. "I finally met someone," he said, "but my body doesn't work anymore." You could hear the pain in his voice. He thought something had broken. He thought it was too late. What he didn't know, and what so many older men never hear, is that this wasn't dysfunction. It was disuse. This is a secret Dr. Emily Carter wishes every man over 60 understood sooner. Sexual function isn't tied only to age, it's tied to activity. Just as muscles weaken without movement, the tissues and blood vessels in the penis respond to how often they're used. When there's no stimulation over time, they slowly begin to atrophy. Nerve endings become less sensitive, elasticity fades, circulation slows, and unfortunately, no one tells him this is happening until it already has. Her patient hadn't touched himself in years, not because he didn't want to, but because he thought it no longer mattered. Life had dimmed his desire. He let it go, assuming it was the natural course of aging. But inside, his body had been quietly adapting to that neglect, closing doors that could have stayed open with just a little attention. The good news, it wasn't too late. With gentle, consistent stimulation, no pressure, just presence, he began to feel again. It wasn't immediate, but slowly his body remembered, and with it, a part of his confidence came back to life. Many older men think that unless they have a partner, it isn't worth maintaining sexual health. That belief isn't just false, it's harmful. At this stage of life, masturbation isn't only about pleasure, it's about keeping systems active, tissues healthy, and the body engaged with a simple, powerful truth. He still matters, and his body still wants to respond if he gives it a chance. But if lack of use can create silent damage, what about the opposite? What if the way he's staying sexually active is actually rewiring his brain in the wrong direction? In the next secret, Dr. Carter reveals something that has become almost invisible in many older men's lives, yet may be quietly dulling sensation, lowering drive, and changing how real intimacy feels. He'll want to hear this. If these ideas are resonating, she invites viewers to comment the number 1 below to let her know they're following along. Now, on to Secret 4. One that uncovers a hidden habit quietly reprogramming desire without him realizing it. Secret 4. Pornography may be destroying sexual reflexes without him knowing it. One evening, she spoke with a widower in his late 60s who was struggling with a loss of feeling, not only physically, but emotionally. He said something she hears too often. "I still touch myself, but I feel disconnected, as if nothing really reaches me anymore." At first, he blamed aging, but as they talked, something became painfully clear. His nightly routine of watching porn, something he'd used for comfort and stimulation, had begun silently stealing his ability to feel in real life. Here's a secret many older men wish they'd known earlier. As the brain ages, it becomes less flexible and less adaptable. If porn has been the primary form of stimulation for years, the brain can slowly adapt to that high-intensity, quick-reward input at the expense of real intimacy. Porn floods the brain with an unnatural surge of dopamine, the reward chemical. Over time, this trains the system to respond only to extreme visuals and constant novelty. Before he knows it, the touch of a real person, or even his own touch, feels dull, distant, or simply not enough. What makes this especially dangerous for older men is how gradually it happens. It doesn't show up at first, it feels like comfort. But one day he notices that images excite him more than connection, that his imagination has gone quiet, that his body feels numb, even though his mind still wants to feel. Her patient described it as being locked in a room with the lights on but no windows. He could see, but he couldn't connect. They worked together to unwind that dependence, not with judgment, but with patience. What happened next surprised even him. Within weeks, sensation began to return. His sensitivity returned, his imagination reignited, all because he stepped away from the screen and began reconnecting with his own body, his breathing, and his inner world. "I wish I'd started sooner," he told her. "It could have saved me years of numbness." Secret 5. Masturbation without enough lubrication causes microtears that can damage circulation over time. This is a purely mechanical truth many older men learn too late. A patient in his early 70s came in complaining of what he called mysterious pain and itching. He assumed it was a skin issue, but on exam, Dr. Emily Carter noticed something more concerning. The skin at the base of the penis and scrotum had a thin, papery texture. He admitted he masturbated almost daily, but no longer produced the natural lubrication he once had. He was doing it dry. As the body ages, skin, tissues, and blood vessels become less elastic, and natural lubrication declines. Without a quality lubricant, repeated friction creates nearly invisible microtears in the skin and underlying tissue. These do heal, but repeated scarring stiffens the tissue, reduces elasticity, and over time can limit blood flow. The damage is progressive and quiet. Tiny tears may sting or itch, but most men ignore them. Constant friction can also injure nerve endings. Years of this habit can lead to reduced sensitivity and poor circulation, both of which undermine erection quality and overall response. The solution is simple and essential. Use a water-based lubricant. It's not a weakness, it's self-care. It protects tissue, respects the body, and keeps pleasure safe and sustainable. Secret 6. Excessive or compulsive masturbation isn't a sign of high drive. It's often a symptom of anxiety or depression. Recently, a 65-year-old man came in not for a physical problem, but for a worry he couldn't shake. His masturbation had become compulsive. "I feel guilty," he said. "I thought I was the only one. It's not even for pleasure, it's to calm me down." He didn't see it as a mental health issue. He saw it as a shameful vice. In a culture that rewards stoicism and emotional suppression, many men turn to private habits to cope with loneliness, anxiety, and undiagnosed depression. Masturbation becomes an escape, an attempt to release stress or numb emotional pain. Instead of relief, it can spiral into shame and isolation. When the behavior turns compulsive, the brain acclimates to constant dopamine spikes. That cycle can actually worsen anxiety and depression. The brief physical relief masks deeper issues without resolving them. The act becomes an empty escape, leaving a person more isolated than before. It's usually not about a high sex drive. It's an emotional wound looking for a quick bandage. The real insight is recognizing this is not a moral failure, it's a call to action. It's the mind and body saying deeper support is needed. Breaking the cycle starts with reaching out to a clinician, a therapist, or a trusted friend. There's no shame in it. It's a sign of strength and the first step toward genuine healing. Secret 7. Masturbation can be a lifeline, not a burden. During a routine visit, a soft-spoken, courteous 75-year-old named Walter hesitated and then asked, "Doctor, is it still okay to touch myself at my age?" The question stopped her, not because it was unusual, but because she has heard it far too many times, always tinged with shame, as if he were confessing something improper. What Walter didn't realize, and what Dr. Carter wishes every older man knew, is this. Masturbation isn't something to hide. At his age, it can be one of the most important forms of self-care he still has. Done with intention and presence, masturbation supports far more than sexual satisfaction. It keeps pelvic tissues healthy by promoting blood flow. It helps the prostate function by clearing fluids that would otherwise stagnate. It eases anxiety, lifts mood, and improves sleep through the natural release of calming neurochemicals. Beyond biology, it does something even more vital. It keeps a man connected to the part of himself that still feels desire, still holds identity, and still wants to be alive. One patient stopped everything after his spouse died. He believed that chapter had closed. For nearly 6 years, he denied himself a single moment of pleasure. "I thought it wasn't appropriate," he admitted. "I didn't think I was allowed to be that kind of man anymore." That sentence stayed with her because she's heard versions of it so many times. Our culture often teaches older men to fade quietly, to shrink, to stop feeling. Dr. Carter counters that message. At this stage of life, mindful self-intimacy is not indulgence. It's maintenance of circulation, clarity, hormonal balance, emotional grounding, immune support, and identity. It isn't a luxury, it's care. It's a declaration that he is still alive in this body and responsible for his well-being. It's a cruel myth because desire doesn't disappear. It just grows quieter, and if he doesn't listen, it turns into loneliness. When her patient gently reconnected with himself, without pressure, his mood improved. He slept better and smiled more. He wasn't chasing youth, he was reclaiming dignity. That's what masturbation in later life can become, not an escape, but a return, a way of saying, "I still matter." Now that the 7 secrets are on the table, there's one final truth that ties them all together, a message that goes beyond science and medicine and straight to the heart of what it means to age with strength, confidence, and self-respect. He won't want to miss it. If he's made it this far, Dr. Emily Carter thanks him, not just for listening, but for having the courage to face a topic most men his age were never given permission to discuss. That alone places him among a rare kind of strength, one rooted not in denial, but in understanding. These 7 secrets aren't just bits of medical advice, they're hard-won truths, shaped by real lives, real regrets, and real awakenings from men who quietly wished they'd known sooner. They began by dismantling the myth that an erection defines masculinity. Far too many men spend years in silent panic, unaware that pleasure and connection remain possible, even if the mechanics have changed. Then came the realization that masturbation isn't only physical, it's emotional, neurological, and profoundly human. Done with awareness, it can provide a foundation like few other practices. He saw how disuse isn't harmless. It can teach the body to forget what it once knew. Yet with consistency, presence, and patience, the body can remember. They address the hidden cost of pornography, the way it rewires the brain and dulls the response to real connection. They learned why friction without lubrication is a quiet enemy, and how a simple personal care product can protect tissue for the long term. And finally, they faced how compulsive masturbation isn't proof of a high drive, but often a sign that the mind is seeking comfort, and how masturbation, especially in later life, is not a source of shame. It can be a lifeline, a way to stay connected to identity, to the body, and to the feeling of being fully alive.